Hi everybody, this is Michael Hildreth, the Marriage Ranger. I want to welcome you to the introduction of our series on temperament called Temperament 101. For the next several weeks, we're going to be spending some time discussing the importance of temperament, how it can be used in a counseling environment, and why it helps us with issues like addictions, trauma, depression and anxiety, and family conflict. I hope you gain a lot from what we have to share with you. To begin with, there are 5 categories of temperament: melancholy, sanguine, supine, choleric, and phlegmatic. Additionally, there are blendings of each of these. For example, there's a melancholy phlegmatic. Understanding of temperament gives us a concise knowledge of the inner workings of each individual. It helps us know who they are because it informs us about how they think. And as Proverbs 23 verse 7 says, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." Knowing temperament also helps us to identify the pressures or feelings that they are dealing with, which are coming from themselves or the environment in which they live, or their own weaknesses or desires. The understanding of temperament also gives us insight to lead people to a stronger relationship with God by showing them how to let God work in their lives and how to interact with God in ways that are beneficial to them. Temperament is so valuable because it helps us to understand ourselves better so that we can face life's challenges with confidence and maintain balance in our lives. The science of temperament is nothing new though. The ancient Greeks understood the reality of temperament, but their theory about why people are so different is outdated and has been proven to be unscientific. Hippocrates and Empedocles before him identified 4 temperaments that were derived from the predominant bodily fluids found in the body, known as humors. If a person was thought to have an excess of black bile, he would be a melancholy. If he had an excess of yellow bile, he would be a choleric. If he had an excess of blood, he would be a sanguine. If he had too much phlegm, he would be a phlegmatic. Of course, these conclusions are not scientifically true. They're in fact flawed. But the names have stuck, and each of these temperaments do indeed exist as a psychological fact. In the late 20th century, Richard and Phyllis Arno were able to identify a 5th temperament distinct from all the others. They called it the supine, which means lying on your back with your face turned upward. Supine is the weakest temperament, most prone to servitude and submission, but the supine is also plagued with self-doubt and struggles of feelings of inadequacy. Now let's spend some time talking about the areas of temperament. There are 3 areas of our humanity where the temperament is observed. Psychologists and counselors call these areas inclusion, control, and affection. Inclusion is your thinking. That's how you process information. It's how you handle the surface relationships in your life and how you socialize with others. Control is your decision making, how much of your will that you want to exercise over others, and how much you will allow others to exercise their will over you. And then the 3rd area is called affection. Affection entails your emotions, which includes how much love and intimacy you want to display or receive from the deep relationships in your life. These 3 elements of our humanity are also described in Scripture. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5, we read about the Shema, which says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your strength." Jesus quoted this passage, but he substituted the word strength for mind, which improves upon our understanding of the mental faculties involved in temperament. The heart, of course, is your affection area where your desires and feelings of love reside. And within your soul is the control area of temperament. That's where we make decisions. The mind is your inclusion area where you process information and data that you receive from the environment in which you live. Each one of these areas can be different in a single individual. For example, you may be a sanguine in inclusion, or a melancholy phlegmatic in control, and maybe a supine in affection. We rarely find individuals with a pure temperament of, say, melancholy in all 3 areas. So let's take some time to talk about each of the 5 categories of temperament. The melancholy is the thinker. Many of the world's geniuses, designers, scientists, inventors, and problem solvers have been melancholies. They are very slow-paced individuals, but they are extremely precise and competent in whatever they set their minds to. They apply themselves to whatever they're doing in order to get perfect results. This is the benefit of being a melancholy, but the problem is that they tend to be perfectionists and hypercritical of themselves and others. This makes them very legalistic and moody. They set very high standards for everyone in their lives, even to the point of breaking off relationships and driving people away with their pessimism and arrogance. But if you need someone prudent, responsible, and faithful to follow through with good results, the melancholy is your best bet. But beware of their self-righteousness and victim complex. Melancholies can become so paranoid that everyone is out to get them, and they get easily offended even when the offense only exists within their own mind. There is no temperament so sensitive, so distrustful, and suspicious of others as the melancholy. They look for evidence to confirm their worst fears about others or about themselves, which often leads to depression, anxiety, paranoia, and relationship conflict. This happens because their thinking moves in processes like a spiral. If they spiral upward, dwelling on positive and hopeful things, they can achieve anything. But if they fall into a downward spiral of pessimism, it's impossible to pull them out of that dark mood. Wherever they go and whoever they talk to, nothing external can influence them to change their rigid focus if their minds are made up. Melancholies must learn about mastering their own thoughts, being humble, and having mercy on the imperfect people around them, because let's face it, other than Jesus Christ, all of us are imperfect. The sanguine is the social temperament. Sanguines are people-oriented individuals. It's very easy to identify a sanguine in a group because they will have the most energy, talk the loudest, tell the most jokes, and they'll usually be wearing the most flashy, colorful clothes. The sanguine is the life of the party. Instead of thinking in processes like a melancholy, the sanguine has scattered thoughts like confetti. They often dwell upon multiple ideas at the same time without spiraling in any one direction. This lack of mental cohesion and consistency makes them very vibrant, enthusiastic, and inspiring people. However, it also makes them tend to be impulsive, rude, and undisciplined. Unlike the melancholy, sanguines are very in tune with their environment and they absorb huge amounts of information. The problem comes when they fail to process that information in a healthy way, usually because they're too bored or distracted to take the time to think about what others are saying to them. The sanguine is an optimistic, upbeat kind of a person and a good communicator. Sanguines are always looking for opportunities to interact with people, and they can often become stressed by inactivity or too much time away from people. When they're not the center of attention, they're prone to histrionic behavior. Histrionic means that they'll behave destructively and throw temper tantrums just to get attention from others. They're also capable of taking on bad behaviors just to get the acceptance and approval that they desperately need. There is no temperament as open and trusting as the sanguine, but these people have to learn how to be less demanding and to be respectful of the needs and space of the people around them. They also must control their speech and avoid thoughtlessly saying things that they would later regret. The supine is a mixture of the sanguine and the melancholy. Supine men and women possess all the deep desires for human interaction that sanguines have without the natural ability to express themselves. You could say that a supine is a muted sanguine. They desire approval and the acceptance of others while eliciting nothing from others. Like the melancholy, the supine appears distant and cold, but unlike the melancholy, supines have a great need to be included and relate to people. No other temperament is as giving, caring, thoughtful, loyal, and gentle as the supine. At the same time, this temperament is the weakest, most dependent of them all. They have an innate humility to them. They see everyone else as higher and more important and valuable, while they view themselves as worthless. Supines are known for indirect behavior or neurotic behavior, which means that they typically behave in a way that brings about the exact opposite response of whatever they want from others. This leads to a lot of frustration for themselves and for the people around them. Supines have to take the initiative to assert themselves, expressing their thoughts and feelings in a forthright and godly way without holding back. They must also overcome their fear of rejection and feelings of worthlessness, and they need to come to realize their own value in order to contribute to life. The choleric is at the opposite extreme of the spectrum. The choleric is the strongest temperament. They're known for being decisive, tough, and strong-willed. They make phenomenal leaders and people motivators. Their strong will is like a melancholy, but unlike the melancholy, they exert their will over others and brazenly try to control them. If they don't have absolute power over the lives of the people around them, it can create frustration and anger inside of them. The choleric appears personable and relates well to people, like a sanguine does, but this is just a facade. While sanguines are people-oriented and socialize just for the sake of socializing, cholerics are task-oriented. They don't see people as people, but as tools to be used. They always have a purpose behind every encounter, with an objective to use others to meet their own goals. Their charm, charisma, and decisiveness serve as a mechanism to motivate individuals. Cholerics can be very perfectionistic, and they are selective about the people they spend their time with. They search for those individuals who are weak-willed and easily manipulated, and tend to resent them when they perform to lower than expected standards. Cholerics must learn to love people for who they are and to stop being dismissive and resentful of others, because this only leads to cruelty against them. They need to understand that narcissistic behavior only drives people away and makes it impossible for them to accomplish anything in life. Finally, we're going to discuss the phlegmatic temperament. Phlegmatics are very common, with about 60% of the population having at least some phlegmatic in their temperament. They're observers, they have analytical minds and a good eye for injustice, but they will rarely, if ever, do anything to address injustices. And this is because of their low energy. They're just too tired to take any initiative in life. The phlegmatic is the most stable and well-rounded temperament. They can relate well to people or to tasks, as long as they don't have to do either for too long. They don't want to be involved in anything that drains them, so they tend to use sarcasm as a defense mechanism and distance themselves from people around them. The greatest danger of the phlegmatic is self-sufficiency. They get into their own little world and seldom, if ever, find any need to change themselves, even if something is horribly wrong. They tend to be the most stubborn and resistant to change of all the temperaments. On the bright side, they can handle nearly any hostile environment, so they often find themselves being the peacemakers in times of fierce conflict. Rejection doesn't bother them, and they are the calmest when tensions are high, but they are very indecisive. Phlegmatics have to learn how to be inspired to get involved in life, and if there is something wrong, they have to stop being complacent with the way things are. Although it is hard, it's possible for a phlegmatic to learn flexibility. I want to thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to exploring temperament with you in this series. We're going to help you get your footing as you embark upon a journey of discovering yourself and the innermost being of the important people in your life. If you have any questions about these matters, or to get your own temperament profile and start working on improving yourself or the relationships around you, you can contact me at www.marriageranger.com. God bless you.